Huh?
Where were you born?
Near Lacey, Linn County, Kansas.
And when's your birthday?
And March the 28th, 1895.
Who's your father?
Huh?
Who's your father?
William Frank Baird.
And your mother?
Carrie Arvilla Baird.
Was your father in the Civil War?
Huh?
Was your father in the Civil War?
I didn't understand you.
You know, the war between the states?
Is Woodward?
No, the war between the states, the Civil War.
I don't get you.
Yeah, okay. Was your father a farmer?
Lifetime.
What?
Farmer and stockman.
Yep. Tell me about what chores you did on the farm.
What?
What chores did you do on the farm as a small boy?
I did everything.
Tell me about it.
Started in with a little kid with a horse and a double shovel, cultivating. About 8 years old.
How many acres could you cover in one day?
Oh, you mean with that?
Yeah.
Oh, I'd get about 3 or 4.
How many acres of ground could you break in one day with a walking plow?
Oh, I started plowing with a team and moldboard when I was, I think, 12. And it'd be hard to say how many acres because it was a 14-inch moldboard, you know, and one team of horses, handles.
How big was your farm?
Well, my dad accumulated, before we left there, 397 acres. Just about 2 miles from the Missouri line.
When did y'all come to Oklahoma?
Huh?
When did you come to Oklahoma?
Well, 3 older brothers homesteaded out here. And my dad finally sold out in 1909, but he kept possession of the place, and we moved out here in 1911.
To Woodward?
Yeah, I brought 1 carload and he bought 1 immigrant car, you know.
What'd you pack in the immigrant car? What'd you bring with you?
What?
What did you bring with you in the immigrant car?
Oh, we had furniture and machinery and horses and cattle and just about everything to start up again.
What did you settle?
Huh?
Where did you settle around here?
Well, my dad had come out to visit my brothers, and he went by a place. It's 11 miles straight south of the theater out here, or 9 miles straight south. And it was the only thing he seen, and he tried to get his boys to come back there and start over, and they laughed at him. So he built a fine new home and all, and a guy come along and offered him such a deal that he got to thinking about this place, and he put him off a few days and come out and it was for sale. So he went ahead and he reserved that place for another year. That was about 2 years altogether. And we farmed it, and then that was 1909. And then we come out here in 11, the spring 11. And I was 15, but I didn't go to school that year. We put all the place to corn. And I and another brother, older, shucked that 100 acres. I missed school.
How long did it take you to shuck it?
Well, we was up till Christmas. Started in, I don't know, up in in November.
Yep. What was the price of corn back then?
Huh?
What was the price of corn back then?
I think about 40 cents a bushel.
Mm-hmm.
My dad hauled it about 4 miles to a cattle feeder. Mm-hmm. We'd get out there quick as daylight, and one morning he got too fast. We had to wait 30 minutes. So dark he couldn't see the corn.
Do you remember the Depression of 1907?
The what?
Depression of 1907?
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, that was, we had a big drought in eastern Kansas, covered part of Missouri and all of eastern Kansas. And I was 6 years old at this time, and I and a brother herded sheep on down near a big creek on the backside of a place. It was all timberland. We'd get up at daylight and eat breakfast, and sunup we'd take them sheep. It's about a half a mile down there. All summer long. That's the only time I got to ever remember getting a whipping. My older brother was 12 and I was 6. And I refused to go, and my dad got a switch and I changed my mind.
When did you decide to join the Army?
Decide?
Yeah.
I didn't do no decision.
Oh.
It was all drafted. I went with 95 boys from Woodward. I've got the list. I wish I'd have brought it with me. There's just 3 of us left here. Carl Barnes and Chester Fithian.
Where'd you go take your basic training?
Fort Oglethorpe, Georgia.
Tell me about basic.
Huh?
Tell me about basic in Georgia.
Well, it was a few miles south of Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I think there was a streetcar that run back and forth. And when we got there, well, we was 3 days and nights on the train. As I remember, there was 22 coaches. They started out in the Panhandle and wound up at Arkansas with Oklahoma boys. And nobody would allow anybody to sleep. If they did, they'd drag them up and down the aisle. You can imagine a bunch of boys. But anyhow, we got in there and all along towards morning, and they didn't want to fool with us, I guess, till daylight, and most everybody fell asleep. And they took us and gave us a shower bath, and then we had a good breakfast. But took us to a long old shed, and it was about as wide as this, what they called a mule shed, what they'd used before. And they towed some straw down, and we issued us cots, and there's where we slept for a few days.
Mm-hmm. What kind of exercises did you do in basic?
Oh, they'd take us out of a morning, and we'd have exercises and different kinds. Mm-hmm. And then they'd bring us back in and to a lunch mess hall, they called it, where we'd get fed.
What time would you get up in the morning?
Oh, I think it was around maybe a little after daylight.
Mm-hmm.
I know later they'd have the lights turned on while I was in camp.
How long did basic last?
Huh?
How long did basic training last?
Oh, well, the first few days they called out everybody that went to high school and college to step out. And several of the boys stepped out. And so they took them over to kind of a school of some kind. And so it ran along several days. And one time they lined us all up and they called out my name and another boy. I never so disgraced in my life. This other boy had taken him out of jail to go with us for breaking in the store and stealing. But we got over there, and I was put in what they called a motor ambulance. And in a few days they transferred this other boy out. And I met a boy there that evening, and he took up with me. And we was the same size, the same age, and both married. And so they put us to drilling. And so I said, Lawrence, there's something wrong with you. He says, you won't never tell. I said, no. He said, I graduated from college and had military training. I know more than any of these boys that's drilling us. We went clear through together. But at the last, he got a little cocky, and they questioned him. And they says, well, you've put it over as pretty good. But it says, we're going to give you your choice, send you to a military school in Atlanta, Georgia, or else we'll give you a discharge. He said, take a discharge. I met him later, 3 years in Stillwater. He was home visiting his folks. And he says, I'm teaching in that Indian school up at Shilaka. And he said, I guess it beats farming. He said, I'm getting $200 a month, or $300 a month, I believe, and 2 months vacation every summer.
Well, what was his name?
Lawrence Corral.
Mm-hmm.
So, I read in where we wrote pretty often a while, and then I found out that they'd put him in as superintendent of that Indian school. He served as superintendent for 30 years, and he retired. And we was going back to eastern Kansas to a cattle sale, and we'd read that he had retired in our Kansas City. So I got a phone book when they went through and located him. And he'd built a nice new home way out in the swanky part of town, and when I crawled out of the pickup, he just made a run and grabbed me. It's been years and years since we'd seen one another. And he couldn't say a word, and I didn't know what to think. And his wife walked out and told me. Said when Lawrence retired, he was operating the old home farm, and he was loading a big truckload of baled hay. And they started up and throwed him off, and he lit on his head. And he said for 3 weeks he didn't come to. And when he did, he couldn't hear nor he couldn't speak. He'd lost his voice. I grabbed the notebook and went to writing, and he'd write back and he could laugh.
Yeah.
But I kept track of him later, but he finally died. But she told me his voice and all hearing might come back sometime, might never. But it was the sorriest meeting I ever had with an old friend.
After your basic in Georgia, where did you go?
Well, we stayed there till several months after the armistice signed.
What did you do on Armistice Day?
They did everything. I woke up in the middle of the night, and I could hear the whistles blowing several miles away at Chattanooga, Tennessee. And I jumped out of the bed and run down and woke up the Corporal Norwood. And he never stopped to dress. He run out and he run down and woke up the officers. And then he came back and none of our barracks got up. But the others you couldn't have slept. It was all just celebrating everywhere. Tearing up things. But the next day, of course, we didn't drill, didn't do nothing. It was just celebrating.
What kind of rifle did you drill with?
What?
What kind of rifle did you have in basic?
What kind of what?
Rifle. You know, what kind of gun do you have?
I don't know just what you mean.
You know, the rifle that you went shooting with.
Oh, well, we were all in the medical corps there and different branches, but we had pretty good eats most of the time. But after the armistice was signed, why, we was transferred into an outfit that was getting them ready to go home. And boy, we like to starve to death. And two of the boys went and reported to high officers. And so they says, go back to the company, boys. We'll never mention your name or nothing. And don't tell nobody, but says we'll visit there tomorrow morning. They come in, two big officers, and walked down the lines to the two long tables. Talked to boys, is this a sample of what you're getting? Is this a sample? And they'd shake their head, yes. And he walked to the front, him and both officers. And he said, boys, we've investigated this. This mess sergeant has saved up several $1,000s. He should have been feeding you boys. And he's got a discharge in. He's a school teacher to go back home and go to teaching. That mess sergeant like to collapsed. He turned to another fella. He says, we had to fire him once for overfeeding the boys. Now he's your mess sergeant. What happened to the other guy, we never knew. I wasn't that fun. But it was all caused by these two boys getting that nerve to go tell.
Did you know your grandparents?
Yeah, I've met them all.
Yeah? Did they have any stories to tell you about when they were kids?
Well, I've heard a lot about some of them had brothers and all was in the Civil War.
Yeah,
you know.
Tell me about that.
Oh, I don't know it, but I know that I've heard them talk about some of them that was discharged and walked clear across the state to get home from where they were.
Did they talk about any battles they were in?
Oh, yeah.
What'd they say about them?
Well, where we were stationed and drilled there in Georgia was right in the old battlefield of the Civil War. Mm-hmm. The old Snodgrass cabin still stood there that is described in history, right where we was drilling.
What battles were they in? What battles were they in, or did they tell you?
Oh, I don't remember, but they were, I think, all infantrymen.
Which side were they on, north or south?
Well, we was right down in the south at Fort Ogdensburg, Georgia. But there's where the others come in and they had the worst fighting.
Mm-hmm. Was that Sherman?
I talked to one fella, he was an old man, and he was some kind of a guard there, and said he was a little boy about 10, 12 years old, and he showed us one drill field, and he said I could have walked all over that the next day without stepping off of a dead body. And we believed him.
Yep. How did the Depression affect you and your family, the 1930s?
I'll tell you, it was kind of bad, but we made it through.
Tell me about the dust storms.
Well, they was pretty bad too, but my wife and I never give up.
What about Black Sunday? That big black dust storm.
One time it was so bad, we didn't know what was coming. It got dark, and we all run to the cellar door. And finally, when it got close enough, my wife says, "Oh, it's all dust. Let's get back in the house."
Is that when it turned dark?
Yeah, but you never knew, you know. It's just as black as night, just the wall coming towards you.
What did that dust storm look like coming towards you?
Well, you couldn't hardly breathe. We had an old house that was just siding on it and shingles, nothing under them. And every morning, why, we'd have to carry the bedding out if the wind kind of went down and hang it on the clothesline and take a broom to it. That's what it was like.
What did you do during World War II?
To tell you the truth of it, I was in several things. They called for a carpenter, and I didn't know what this for, and I wasn't doing nothing. I was waiting there till they got the 4 ambulances in. I was to be an instructor, and so I went and asked them, and Captain O'Neill said, "What do you want to know for?" "Oh," I said, "I've helped carpenter build houses and shingles," and I said, "A boy right over in the Company 3 here, Mr. George, and he was working for an uncle, and him shingled his house before we come to the army." He said, "You're just the guy we're looking for." I like to collapse. So he said, "Report down here tomorrow morning. I'll give you a new set of carpenter tools, and you're not to do a thing. You'll have all the boys you need to help you repairing roofs and doing things." He said, "Our company mechanic has been in the hospital for 6 months, and we're getting the roofs leaking and everything."
Now, was this in Georgia?
Yeah, I like to collapse. But I got by with it.
How long did you work as a carpenter?
Oh, I worked at that the most of the time when I was in the Army.
Tell me about the big tornado that went through here.
Huh? The hit Woodward?
Yep.
Well, that was put near too bad. It looked like it's coming a terrible rain. And my wife had a lot of baby chicks. And we was out moving them and putting them inside of a building. And so we had a hired man there, a young fella, and he was scared. He just scared to death. We finally seen a fire towards Woodward, or we thought it was, and we decided the lightning had struck a house. And this missed us, I guess, 4 or 5 miles. It's angling from the southwest. Anyhow, after we got everything settled, another boy come was working for us. And he said, "You know they had a tornado in Woodward?" My wife says, "No." He said, I and my folks was up there all night. Of course, the phone lines went out and everything, you know. There's no way of getting word. So we hurried and got the cows milked and went up to see.
What did the town look like?
Huh. Some places it was awful. Just awful.
What did you do in the Second World War, 1941 through 45?
Well, my boy went and I carried on his farming and all while he was gone. He had a big place rented there, 260 acres, and so I was lucky. I didn't know how I was going to even farm my own and get by, but I had a boy the first year that his daddy come to me and says, I got 2 boys and can you use one? I said, I sure could. Well, then we was ready to start a big harvest alone. And a fellow that was pretty deaf and all and couldn't hardly hear or understand had been wanting to work for me. And my wife says, let's go get him. And we met him and his wife going to town. He said he could kind of read lips and understand you. And his wife was with him too to tell him. He said, got a half a day's work. Be there tomorrow noon. I said, that's just when we want to start. And I never had such a good hand. We made signs a lot of times, but boy, he liked to kill me. One night we worked till 2:30 in the morning. The elevators had stopped up for loading wheat off the ground. Everybody wanted him the next year. No, help Ralph, help Ralph.
What was his name?
Jim Wright.
How old was he?
Oh, he was up by Judge probably in around 50, 45 or 50.
Yep.
His boy here is the only one left, Marvin Wright, one of the head guys in REA, you know.
Well, anything else you want to talk about?
No. I'll already be enough.
Okay.
All that windjamming.
Yeah.